Welcome, everyone. My name is David Tarnas, co-chair of the Act 90 Working Group, along with my other co-chair, Senator Lorraine Inouye. We welcome you all here today. It is November 17th, just after 1 p.m., information briefing of the Act 90 Working Group, and we're running this by video conference. And I want to welcome all the members of the working group here. If I could ask Chair Case to introduce your team from DLNR, and then I'll do the same thing with Deputy Director Atta from DOA. Chair Case.
Sure, thank you. Yes, we have from DLNR, we have our First Deputy, Bob Masuda. We have our Assistant Administrator for Land Division, Kevin Moore. From Division of Forestry and Wildlife, we have Emma Ewan and Steve Bergfeld. Also from Land Division, we have Ian Hirokawa. I think that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much,
I'm also
Chair.
acting for David Smith, who's at an Oregon meeting of foresters. So I'm the acting administrator.
Excellent. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
Morris Atta for Department of Agriculture. If you could introduce yourself and your team.
Morris Atta, Deputy Director for Department of Agriculture, and I have with me Linda Murai, who is the primary staff that has been providing me all of the support on this matter.
Great, thank you. Thank you both for being here. Thanks everyone for being here, and thank you to the testifiers who are here today with us as well. We've circulated the minutes, we've got 3 sets of minutes. I'd like to just run by everybody, see if there's any corrections one needs to make. August 23rd, those meetings were prepared by DOA, and then DLNR reviewed them, made a few minor changes, or made a few changes. So that is up for everyone. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Any objections to those August 23rd minutes? No objections. Okay, let's move to the next one, September 9th. That was prepared by DLNR. It was circulated prior to this meeting. Does anyone have any corrections to that? You had to take a chance to look at it. Department of Agriculture, Morris?
Yeah, I had a quick moment to review it, not in depth, but I just had 2 comments on page 4. In the description of what I had responded to your comment about adapted, or how we have adapted our strategic plan to handle multiple use issues, and that we have not made changes to our property management plan or mission, but we did, to include ranching and pasture, because it has always included those items. And basically we, I guess, fine-tuned it or reviewed it in our strategic plan. But yeah, we didn't really, add it. It was always there in our plan.
Clarification, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we can make that clarification so that it's more accurate. Any other comments? Yes. Go ahead, Morris.
Okay. No, I was just trying to I think my response to David Smith's comments about I believe this is the Big Island Dairy property issue with noting trespass. I'm not sure. Well, actually, I don't have a change. I was just trying to understand what the point was in terms of how these sorts of trespass issues are being handled by DLNR as opposed to how they were being handled by DOA, because I think basically the approach and the ultimate resolution of the situation just, again, involves a collaborative effort on the part of both agencies, regardless of who was managing property.
Good point. Okay. Well, maybe I can modify that slightly to make that clearer.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for those modifications, those corrections on the September 9 meeting minutes. The last set of minutes are October 14, prepared by Department of Agriculture. We've circulated it prior to this meeting. Do we have any comments or corrections on those? No, not seeing any. Okay, so if what I'd like to do is just vote to accept these 3 sets of minutes, and the September 9th, we're going to modify slightly to address the concerns of Deputy Director Atta. I would like to move that we, as a working group, vote to accept the August 23, September 9, and October 14 minutes, and we approve them as written, except for September 9th, we would modify slightly. So I make that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Chair Case. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, thank you. We will, those have been approved, and we will post those as part of our record. Okay. Next thing on our agenda is the report of the Act 90 Working Group. Chair Inouye and I took the initiative to prepare a draft report and include recommendations from us as co-chairs. I circulated that to everyone on the working group. I would appreciate getting your comments on that. We could get them in the meeting today. You could send me follow-up correspondence as well. We don't need the working group's formal vote to approve this, but I wanted to take the opportunity to share it with everybody, including the testifiers and interested public, to get your feedback so that we can really continue this inclusive dialogue that we've been doing. So I'll open up now to Chair Inouye, if you want to make any comments before opening it up to other working group members. Go ahead, Chair Inouye.
Sure. Just an add to, if we look at the draft under challenges and findings, if we look at the second paragraph, it says the working group finds that the lands under DLNR used primarily and exclusively for agricultural purposes should be transferred to DOA. I'd like to add probably another word, used primarily, exclusively, comma, and substantially for agricultural purposes. So the word substantially, I'd like to add it into that paragraph.
Okay, thank you. And I would welcome comments which include specific language like this, or general comments from others as well. But anything further, Chair Inouye, before we open it up to comment?
No, because that goes to the question regarding below that, 1, 2, 3, the third paragraph below what I indicated. It talked about multi-users on lands. And so I think that would pretty much clear the air regarding transfers, regarding the land uses.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me go ahead with opening it up for comments. So may I ask first, either Morris Atta or Suzanne Case, if you want to give any of your comments?
Yeah, thanks. I'm sorry. Can you just point me to that paragraph that Chair Inouye was?
Second, challenges and findings. The second paragraph, where it says the working group finds that lands under DLNR used, and then it says primarily and exclusively, all we're adding is the word substantially for agriculture purposes should be transferred to DOA. Yeah. Okay. If you look on the bottom, where it says working group and it says multi-uses, And I think it would clear the air, because when you talk about multi-uses, it can be something that more substantially related to DLNR lands, and it should stay with DLNR lands. But if we add and stick with lands, why should we transfer certain lands that have more or the majority of agriculture purposes? Then that should be transferred to DOA. Because on the multi-users, it doesn't quantify, yeah. You know, it doesn't say whether it's 25% or 50% or 80% of the lands. So if we include the word substantially, and I think it would clear the air, because all other multi-uses pretty much should then remain with DLNR.
Yeah, and I think what we understand that section to be is the ag lands that really are pretty much exclusively in that use. We have been transferring the other lands. Other lands are multiple uses. Yeah, and multiple uses. There are, you know, the bulk of the lands we're talking about here are lands that are in pasture use, but also have these other uses and values. So yeah, I agree with your clarification.
Yeah, and that clears the air. Like, you know, the multi-uses can also lead to pathways to hunting and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
They should not be involved in that kind of management.
Yeah, right. DLNR is generally in support of the report. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Case.
I'm not sure. Maybe we should ask Morris. Is that
Well, he's next. Yeah.
okay with you guys?
Let's go to Department of Agriculture next.
Yeah.
Morris.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, no, I understand Senator Inouye's clarification, and yeah, we did have concern about how the term multi-use was being used in the report, because it quantifies it. You know, we have no indication of what lands could be included in that class of lands that would remain with DLNR. We thought it would be appropriate for those lands that have, you know, at least some kind of significant conservation or, you know, cultural or recreational use to remain with DLNR, since a significant portion of that management would be those kinds of activities. But as written, it was, you know, as Senator Inouye pointed out, there's really no way of distinguishing a parcel that is, you know, pretty much, used as pasture with a potential conservation use in the future that could occupy, say, 10 or 25% of the acreage. And is that a situation that would be appropriate for DLNR to hang on to the property when the immediate management needs and purposes are really agriculture? And I guess the concern is the way it was drafted, there was no way to assess that or make that evaluation that is this an appropriate transfer or not? And it just makes kind of a blanket statement that if there are multiple uses, it stays with DLNR, as opposed to if it has multiple uses and those uses, you know, are primarily or significantly appropriately managed by DLNR, then they should stay with DLNR. There's nothing to make that distinction, and I think that's what Senator Inouye was touching on with that language change. But I would suggest on the language that was proposed that rather than an and, that it be an or, because
okay, exclusively or substantially.
Yeah.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, and if I could just respond, I think we are talking about things that are part partly hard to quantify and partly
Right.
maybe happening, maybe potential for in the future. That is the reason we're trying to keep these lands at DLNR, but without, any radical change. So we're just, wanting to make sure there's nothing automatic about it because there's a lot of different variables here. And as we've shown, we've been pretty straightforward about where those are and where those aren't.
Okay, I have a question for land division. Is the NARS program, does the NARS program include conservation district lands? It does. Okay.
I think
So,
this
and
is
then
Russell
it stays, the
speaking.
NARS program all stays with DLNR, right?
Yeah, I mean, the NARS, the one I'm thinking of is up at Poaco, Mauna Kea, and that is, my understanding, conservation. But I'm not sure if there's any NARS lands in the agricultural area where
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have actually one of these lands that was proposed originally in some of the legislation to be transferred Waiea in South Kona that is now being designated as a natural area reserve, and that's in the Ag District after it was vacated and is landlocked. And there's other NARS like Kanayo Natural Area Reserve, which is also in the Agricultural District, but most of them are in the Conservation District.
Okay, then another, and why I raised this lands in conservation is, and I think I shared this some time ago, maybe with just a land division during our visits, but like the Hamakua Coast and Emma, you're familiar with, when you leave outside of Hilo, former sugar lands, from Papaico all the way over to Lakohoihoi along the shoreline, Russ. I understand part of the county lands. I think they identify, all the cliff areas in conservation, but most of the lands inward are in ag, and some are doing ag activity. So I'm just curious as to how we approach that, if there's any lands under DLNR along the Hamakua Coast, but if it's already in agriculture, I don't know, because who the owners are, lands have been sold. So how do we identify that? And I guess it goes back to ownership. So if there's nothing along the coast that's under DLNR, then I guess there's no problem.
So, Chair Inouye, there is an instance where there's private land that's regulated in the conservation district along the Hamakua Coast, and the landowner it's used for agriculture, and the landowner, I believe, is making an application to change the conservation district boundary to ag.
Ag.
Yeah, and so it's not a DLNR managed land.
Okay.
It's regulated when it's in the conservation district, and I believe we support that.
Okay. So there's kind of no disagreement then, because if it's in ag and part of
I think in that instance it was a the land right along the coast there is a I don't know how far the conservation district boundary is, and so whether it's public or private, we regulate it in the conservation district through OCCL, but it's not DLNR land.
Oh, okay. But do they have to go for boundary amendment or rezoning or whatever? They still have to go to BLNR?
If it's owned by us, but if it's not owned by us, no.
I think it's a land use commission.
Oh, okay.
But
and maybe we comment.
Part of the county rezoning process.
Yeah, or state land use.
Okay.
State land use district.
Okay.
I was gonna note we have some on other islands that I can think of where we have ag going on. Some are partially the parcel is split into ag and conservation, and it's not subdivided, right? And so that's one issue. And I think we might even have some doing a little bit of ag on conservation. If I may ask Kevin, if you remember, Kevin Moore, if you're on there. Do we have any that are doing ag solely on conservation parcels?
As long as it doesn't have an issue with DOA.
Yeah, and I think these are private lands you're talking about, not DLNR lands. Is that right?
That's what my ask is. Is it under
Oh, okay.
DOA or yeah?
Yeah, because if
So
it's
what-
private land, then that's not really within this Act 90 working group discussion.
Right. I don't know if Kevin is there. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
he's not.
I'm here. I don't know of any leases that are solely conservation and
Okay.
used in ag, but there's definitely mixed.
Ag conservation lands.
Yeah.
And again, like Chair said, it goes to LUC and the counties. Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to make a comment on Morris's suggestion of the word or instead of and, regarding Senator Inouye's comment about inserting substantially. I think that a lot of these lands that GLNR seeks to, retain and are multiple use would be considered substantially in ag use, but also have these other potential uses. So I don't know if saying or is really something that we could agree to.
Can I jump in on that? The reason why I suggested or,
Go ahead.
because when you put in the term exclusively, you will almost never find a property that's exclusively used for any particular use. And it's always a subjective mix of uses to one degree or another, whether it's having a path that comes across your land or whatever it is. And so when I saw that kind of language in there, and if you use a conjunctive, to connect those descriptions, it requires the parcel to be in exclusive ag use, as opposed to what the reality of the situation will most likely be. And that's the reason why I didn't think the word and would be appropriate, because we're always dealing with degrees of use and degrees of characterization that, so that's my primary reason why I said that.
And again, on the other side, it could be currently primarily in ag use, but have all these other important uses. So that's why we consider them multiple use. I mean, I think what we're trying to get to is like, if it's clearly ag use and not important for anything else, we all support it going over to ag. I think that's primarily what we're trying to get to here.
If I may give an example, like in Waimanalo, Morris, we have those ag leases that we turned over to under Act 90, which are solely just ag / residential maybe, but then ag, right? And as far as we turned those over to you folks clearly, right, to Department of Ag.
I understand what you're trying to say, but I'm just saying that in a very typical situation, it's very easy to have properties that are, like substantially used for ag, but have other uses that are going on that would be excluded from falling into this category because of the use of the term and. And I'm just saying by use the term or, we would then be at least in a position to evaluate whether or not those other uses are significant enough to exclude it from the list of transfers, or to conclude that it should be ag and turn it over. I'm trying to create an evaluation tool that doesn't limit those kinds of properties from being considered for transfer.
Language I have no problem with, as long as the agency DLNR knows the effect of it. Just one question with regards to formality and the process. And I think Chair Case, you probably are more familiar. When we do the final on this working group reports, and it goes to the agencies. You guys all look at it. Does it have clarification or a read by AG's office or by your representative from AG's office to look at?
And in our case, we looked at the draft report at the staff level. I don't think we ran it by our AGs. I mean,
I'm just thinking.
I think,
they would-
yeah, we could do that. I think what we're trying to support is the general discussion here.
Yeah.
And, to the extent that this turns into proposed legislation, then we for sure would go through that
Okay. All right.
review process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then, I agree that we should keep the language, change the language to or instead of and.
And let me emphasize
A
that.
recommendation from DOA.
Thank you, Chair Inouye. And let me emphasize that this is a report to the legislature. Everyone can read it, of course, but it's a report to the legislature. And then Chair Inouye and I will work on proposed legislation. And that will be introduced through the regular process, and we'll seek everybody's input on that as we go through the hearings. And so this is really just it's a resource document along with all the other things on our website and this working group report is really just to summarize what we've learned and findings, and then the co-chair's recommendations. And so that's my intention behind this working group report.
Yeah, that's all I have for changes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from DLNR or DOA?
I had a couple comments, which more for clarification, just so that
Please. Go ahead.
In the background section, we talk about the transfer process, and when we go into the third paragraph, when we're talking about the conditions for transfer, it sort of blurs the distinction, the notion that the Act 90 transfers was an act that transfers management jurisdiction over lands and not just, title to land or specific leases or RPs. So it could just be a question of semantics that I'm asking for, I guess, tweaks to make clarifications that it is in fact, Act 90 is in fact a transfer of management jurisdiction, and it includes both unencumbered parcels as well as encumbered parcels. And the process that we have at DOA when it is encumbered is we have these three criteria. But in fact, when we're reviewing transfers, and if it's just an unencumbered parcel, we also consider those factors for suitability for farming. So, parcel size, access to water, topography, things like that, which it's not quite clear that this description covers. And I thought that we should note that.
You gotta give us the page. You gotta give us page, and where are you looking at?
This is page 2 under the background in the last paragraphs. And I can send everyone, some language that might help clarify that.
Please do. Yeah, send us some revision for that so that it accurately reflects the DOA process. That'd be great.
Right, and just the other comment was that the last paragraph talks about the prioritization of the transfers in terms of transferring encumbered lands before addressing pasture lands. And I believe the intent did initially, point towards moving those parcels that were encumbered, because in fact, this was an effort to help the lessees on the land, so to transfer those. But it was never an either or situation. All categories of agricultural lands were considered, and in fact, some were unencumbered lands were in fact transferred as well in the early phases of Act 90. And so it's not a major, issue, but it's a clarification.
Yeah, let's correct the record because the way it's written does not reflect the transfer of unencumbered lands that were done at that initial stage. And so if you could provide us with some suggested language to make sure that's accurate, that would be great.
Yeah, I think basically those are the two comments that I had. Just clarifications.
Great, I appreciate that. And as I say, I would welcome any specific communication from DLNR or DOA on the draft report, so we could incorporate those changes when we prepare the final one. Any other comments from DLNR or DOA on the draft report? Okay. If not, then thank you very much for your comments on those. We'll incorporate those changes and prepare the final report that will include or that we'll prepare and submit to the legislature so we meet our deadline. I'd like to, if there's no objection, I'd like to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is public testimony on any agenda item. If Nicole is here, nope, she's gone. So then let me ask Jacob Tavares, who will speak on behalf of Nicole Galassi for the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. If you want to provide some testimony, Jacob, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to just state that the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council would like to stand on our written testimony, though we would like to highlight in our testimony that we feel that one of the easy steps forward would be make sure that the lands are that are already approved by DLNR for transfer. 111 of them get transferred without any more delay. This has been an extended process, and there's been a lot of variables that have come to fruition within the agriculture industry since Act 90 was originally put in place. And one of the things that farmers, ranchers really rely on is trying to remove as much of the variables as possible. And so we would like to see a lot of these 111 leases be moved without any further delay. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much, Jacob, on behalf of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. And everyone has the written testimony to read in detail, so you can see the other comments there. Next, we have Peter Simmons. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David. Aloha, everyone. Just a couple of comments. You've got my written testimony, so no need to go into all of that. But one thing I've noticed over the years is that we tend, and today we've continued to that tendency to consider all conservation lands as the same. And of course they're not. We know that, and you know that. So maybe a little bit more careful characterization when we're speaking about large areas of land might be useful since they have different purposes. That's just a suggestion. Coming from that, of course, when sugar was in place before our 1960-ish laws, rules, and regs and land use was, and so there was a grandfathered use as for sugar on the Hamakua coast, and I'm sure in other areas. I'm just really familiar with the ones along the Hilo Hamakua coast, to the point where OCCL, I believe it was, I'm going to guess 2004, took a Hawaiian family to the Board of Land and Natural Resources because they were acting outside of the bounds of their grandfather clause. They weren't growing sugar, they were growing more Hawaiian crops. And the board threw that one out. But it was just basically they were continuing the use of agriculture on their private land outside of Hilo. And I'm presuming that they continue to do that. That's just by the way. I noticed that Waiea was mentioned, and I'm wondering if that's going to be conservation P or R or G or what you have in mind. But also, I didn't see, I looked, but I did not see a Yeehop Ranch mentioned or listed by TMK or otherwise. And I just wonder if that might have slipped through somehow.
That's private, isn't it?
Yeah, part of it is private and part of it is state-owned. And when I inquired in the past, I got one answer from a state employee at DOFA saying, no, there was nothing there of the states. Of course, I knew that was wrong. And then another employee of the state got the land backwards in terms of what was Mauka, what was Mackay. But my point is just to mention that I just couldn't find it listed in your, you know, in what we were given as far as paperwork, and I might be deficient there. It wouldn't be surprising if I was. In terms of agriculture, having conservation items embedded in it, burials, graves, ocean, all of that has multiple uses. And I hope that those will be included in what is agriculture, considered agriculture, or okay for agriculturalists to continue managing. Let's see. Yeah. I think that's mainly it. I would say one other thing, just a thought for you. If you're looking to utilize the intelligence and energy of local people, including ranchers and so forth, it wouldn't hurt to incentivize, and you might have already considered this, license to grow koa on land that the state wants to have koa on. It could be a third stays with the person who planted it as a license, as a personal property interest, can be sold and so forth. Perhaps a third could stay on the land, and a third could be up to the discretion of DLNR DOFA to do with as they wish. And it would help the ranchers keep their land, at least give them a chance to be a part of the program. And I think it might be beneficial, at least it might want to consider that. Last time, I thought Neil gave a very good presentation about planning. And my report, or my testimony, kind of went into the planning aspect a little bit, because it's in some ways on these difficult, complex, large landscape lands that require good planning. There's an absence of it. And if the lands were well planned for in an open, transparent, and collective way, I think that you would get better. You would have a better landscape when the plan was enacted through the lease and other mechanisms. And I did mention, and I don't know if I heard Mr. Suji correctly, but indefinite boundaries between state and state departments, that's not allowed. Is that illegal? It's done in the private sector. I'm thinking that might be something that could be useful and take away a roadblock of management. So I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this. I noted in my testimony something that I had never properly read. You guys probably have, but I wasn't familiar with the Aloha Spirit Act. And I'm sorry to say that. So I'm going to try to improve myself in that area. And from the hearings that I've had and management that I've had over ranches and the way I've watched DOFA and DLNR act over the years, I think we could all use a little more. So thank you for this opportunity to be a part of this. And I guess good luck.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate your testimony and your good wishes. Janet Ashman, Hawaii Farm Bureau. Janet is available. Go ahead.
I am. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you. Please proceed.
Thank you. I'm not doing my visual because I'm in a rural area that has very, very low broadband.
Believe me, I understand it. So
I do.
Go ahead without video.
Aloha, everyone. I am Janet Ashman. I'm speaking on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We're the state's largest nonprofit general farm organization representing the interests of thousands of farm families throughout the Hawaiian Islands. We really want to thank each of you for making the time and effort to help ag producers continue to supply food for our communities while ensuring that the public trust is well served. Hawaii producers are right now pleading with you not to let more years go by without a reasonable solution. And we recognize that achieving that is not easy. We reviewed the working group draft report, and we have the following, especially the following two concerns. First of all, time is of the essence. There should be a legislative deadline to transfer ag lands in production to DOA. It's clear that Act 90, passed, as we all know, 18 years ago, was intended to do that. And those people whose leases or RPs have not been transferred continue to be in a state of limbo. They're unable to avail themselves of the advantages afforded under a DOA lease. They don't have the security, the stability that comes with a long-term lease in order to make investments and infrastructure improvements, or even contemplate long-term plans. How can they run a business with this insecurity? How can they adequately maintain or improve the land with short-term leases that don't lend themselves to appropriate funding or investment? We're talking about lessees who are food producers and land stewards, who are an important part of Hawaii's goals of greater self-sufficiency and conservation efforts.
Excuse me, Janet. Janet, could I interrupt?
Yes,
you're reading your testimony, and I appreciate that you're making sure that you get all of your points. But if I could ask you to summarize instead of reading your entire testimony to us.
I will. Thank you. I apologize. I guess my biggest point here is that fostering agriculture and conserving natural resources are not mutually exclusive, and we need to do both. So, and producers shouldn't be forced to waiting additional years while DLNR works to adjust its priorities and policies and rules to expand its mission to accommodate this. So if we keep the agricultural lands in production under DLNR, that is going to take time for DLNR to do that. I don't even understand how it could be done within the next several years. Also, my second point is about what Morris and others have talked about, trying to clarify the primarily and exclusively for ag purposes and those which have multiple uses to stay with DLNR. We believe that distinction is unwarranted. All lands have multiple uses and benefits and resource protection needs. So I won't go on, but we do urge the transfer of ag lands, especially in production, to DOA with appropriate lease conditions to ensure that natural resources are protected. And that can be done. And I don't want to misquote Peter Simmons, but I've really appreciated his testimony and reading his written testimony, where he lays out exactly what we think could work is a collaborative process where both agencies work together, but that ag production lands are transferred to DOA. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janet. I appreciate that. And I hope I didn't rush you too much. I just didn't want you to have to read everything since we have it before us as well.
I do understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. We have received written testimony from Kapapala Ranch, the Local Food Coalition, from Jim Duffy and Micah Munikata with the Ulu Pono Initiative. Are there any other testifiers with us today that would like to provide testimony at this time? I don't see any others. Okay, let me turn it back to the working group members. If you had any questions of the testifiers that you wanted to follow up on, or any comment on what you've heard from the testifiers, now's the time to do that. Seeing none, then I think that we have completed the business before us today. Co-Chair Inouye, did you have any final words before we adjourn our meeting?
No, maybe a question to who brought up the fact with regards, or maybe Peter, with regards to dual management on parcels managed by DLNR and DOA. I'm just trying to, in my mind, think about the management aspect. I mean, I don't think we do that at all. And agencies, you guys can correct me. I don't see how it will work, but I'm open to hear it. And give me examples.
Maybe I could ask, we've heard from Peter, who has made the suggestion, which, I think he'd be happy to expound on, but rather than having Peter tell us what is the best thing to do, because I think we've heard that and we've heard his admonition and good suggestion. Maybe it would be good to hear from the agencies about the reality of making these collaborative efforts work. So may I turn it over first to Morris and then to Suzanne?
Yeah, we have numerous examples of how agencies manage different mission priorities. And we, in the situation recently with Coqui Frogs as an example, where lands, DHHL managed lands there was a finding of some coquis. DLNR and DOA with the Hawaii Invasive Species Group and DOFA, because some of the areas involved forestry lands, all coordinated to respond to this environmental threat on DHHL owned lands. And basically that's kind of the point that I try to make when I say that there are that agencies already have collaborative working arrangements for all kinds of different threats or problems or issues. And this also happens when we have, SHPT issues. Nobody but SHPT and DLNR has jurisdiction over those matters. And whether it's the lands where remains are found are, managed by any other agency, that agency has to work with SHPT to resolve that issue, because no one but SHPT has the statutory authority to deal with those matters. And similarly, in these situations that we have, the Department of Agriculture only has jurisdiction over agriculture and management of agriculture. So if there are any issues that arise, we have to work with the appropriate sister agencies. We often work with DOFA on, conservation and endangered species matters, and and we work with OHA and other Native Hawaiian organizations for cultural matters. So that's basically how we operate, and that's kind of what I envision when I hear these multiple, diverse, and very important priorities being brought up. There are agencies who know how to deal with those priorities and really should be the ones given the authority to handle the situation and come in regardless of who has management jurisdiction over that property. The property management is just a geographic limitation.
Yeah.
Subject matter management is something else, and that remains with the proper agencies, and that's how I see it from the DOA standpoint.
Thank you very much, Morris. Suzanne?
Chair, just a comment, and that's true with all the other agencies. No different than DOCARE working with conservation districts with DHHL, and that's an administrative working operation. So I no different than all of us at the Capitol work with DAGs, with operations. So yeah, but the issue with regards to the question about having management as an example, on a parcel, and that would have to be in statute. It's something that I wanted to clarify what the offer is to do that, because it's there's management of lands that are strictly if it's DLNR lands and managed by DLNR and the land division, no different than DOA and its jurisdiction. And there's rules and governing their management. So that's where I'm coming from. So just to explain, because we know that it's already happening amongst agencies, and it's their role as a cooperative management to work together. So unless unless there's something else out there.
Thank you,
Yeah,
co-chair.
if I could
Suzanne,
just add,
please go ahead.
I thank you. I just totally agree with all of that. And you know, we do try to be collaborative and work together, even stretching our strict boundaries, for instance, on goat management and access deer on Maui. Those are all threats to farmers as well as you know, urban areas. And it's you know, it's not our land, but we do try to help as much as possible. And I think that having the same kind of legal framework for both agencies would help that that collaboration even more. And I just wanted to echo or give a thumbs up to Peter's suggestion about licensing for koa production. We are all on board with that. That's a win-win-win all around, kind of, no matter whose jurisdiction you're on. And we'd be very interested in working with anybody who is interested in growing trees.
Thank you, Chair Case.
Also on Department of Ag lands as well, right?
Exactly.
A plan, Morris, because I know we all of us farmers need to give you our plans when we apply for leases. So that is a part of agriculture, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Those kinds of business decisions in terms of what you grow and who you work with, you know, are completely appropriate and encouraged if it's going to contribute to the success of the, you know, the agricultural operations.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from the working group members? Seeing none, what I'd like to do is thank everybody for participating in this process. Hopefully this conversation will lead us to legislation that can move forward. This is, you know, we're just on the road. We're not at our destination yet. And so please keep working together. I appreciate the collaborative effort that everyone has exhibited in our working group process. And I would urge us to continue to work together as we go through next session. Please get back to me or Chair Inouye with any additional comments on the draft report. We will be writing up minutes, or we'll have the minutes prepared for this one, this meeting, and we'll post those. So all of the documents will be on our website so that that's available for everyone to look at. And this will, as I say, form a basis for us to prepare legislation for consideration in the 2022 session, which starts just in 2 short months. So if there's no further comments from you, Co-Chair Inouye, then I'll go ahead. There's no further business before this working group today on our meeting agenda. And I would like to adjourn the meeting and say a big mahalo nui loa for all of your participation. You take care. Aloha.
Aloha.